AP Gov, what is happening? This is interest groups, and this is the last PowerPoint show of the year. I know you're sad. This is the end. This is death row. Also death row. This is the end of the line, the terminus, the last stand. I know you're disappointed. I'm disappointed too. But hey, we gotta do what we gotta do. We gotta talk about interest groups. If you're disappointed now, just wait till you hear about what interest groups do. I know you're still sad. Interest groups. What do? Before I even talk about them, I just want to say that this is not some secretive information, some mystery. Republicans and Democrats, from Sanders to Trump to Ted Cruz to Gary Johnson to whoever, acknowledge the fact that a lot of public policy in America is created by interest groups, big corporations, and people with a lot of money have a lot of influence in Washington, D.C., and have a big influence on the way public policy is created. Interest groups and lobbying are inevitable and necessary in America. They're looked upon with suspicion and fear. I know. Ronaldo gets upset when he hears about interest groups. It's upsetting to understand, which you will in a second, their enormous influence on American public policy. Just look at Trump awkwardly trying to kiss Pence. Interest groups want to influence policy making. Interest groups are a group of people who are like-minded that band together and they try to get their agenda passed. It is perceived that they put their interests ahead of public interests. Well, what would James Madison say in Federalist 10? He'd say the more parties the better, the more interest groups the better, the more factions the better. I have showed you guys this website before when we talked about factions when we read Federalist 10. This is just a list of some interest groups in the United States. If you can think of a public policy position, there's going to be an interest group for and against that public policy position. These interest groups are trying to put their interests ahead of the public interests. Some are going to argue that their interests are the public interests, and sometimes those people would be correct. But it gets really complicated. Let's talk about it in greater detail. The main difference between parties and interest groups is that parties get elected, they try to get elected. They try to become part of the government apparatus and enact policy from within the government, like as the government official, as the president, as the congressperson, as the governor. Interest groups are different. Now, sometimes they care about who gets elected, other times they don't. The reason why they don't necessarily care that much is because whoever gets to be in power, the interest group will try to influence that person. So they don't necessarily care all the time who gets elected, because whoever is in there, they're going to try to influence them. They have various strategies. They have lobbying, grassroots or direct lobbying, which I'll talk about in a second, litigation, and then campaign contributions. One of the most successful interest groups in American history was the Anti-Saloon League. It was a key component of the Progressive Era and was strongest in the South and rural North. It drew heavy support from Protestant ministers and their congregations, especially Methodists, Baptists, Disciples, and Congregationalists. In 1895, it became a national organization and quickly rose to become the most powerful prohibition lobby in America, pushing aside its older competitors, the Women's Christian Temperance Union and the Prohibition Party. Its triumph was nationwide prohibition, locked into the Constitution with the passage of the 18th Amendment in 1920. Later it was defeated in 1933. But if you know anything about global history or American history and how influential and popular alcohol is, getting a bunch of Americans to voluntarily give up or outlaw alcohol was an amazing, amazing accomplishment. That's the power of lobbying. Speaking of lobbying, there are two types. Direct lobbying refers to attempts to influence a legislative body through communication with a member or employee of a legislative body, or with a government official who participates in formulating legislation. Direct lobbying refers to going and talking to Congresspeople directly. Grassroots lobbying refers to attempts to influence legislation by attempting to affect the opinion of the public with respect to that legislation and encouraging the audience to take action with respect to that legislation. So both types of lobbying tries to influence the politician. The direct lobbying is talking to the politician directly. Grassroots is influencing public opinion and therefore indirectly influencing the politician. So I have some examples here of grassroots lobbying. People anti-bank bailout. This is in Albany. These are nurses. People lobbying against Common Core. I think it's funny they call like Common Core like over testing like child abuse. I don't think it's child abuse. I mean, I think that might be a little extreme. These are the top lobbying firms in Washington, D.C. Okay, those are the people that big corporations hire to go talk to Congress and bureaucratic agencies on their behalf. Pay special attention to Patton Boggs LLP, number 2 on the list. We'll come back to that in a second. These are ones I took. This is from Albany, New York. Okay, so the state capital's got a lobbying day. So the different industries go up to Albany and speak directly to the politicians, or try to have a little audience with them, or they might just protest outside. They have signs. And what they're trying to do is make their cause public, and then therefore, if you can sway public opinion, hopefully the politician will join your cause. Next one. It's the ways that special interest groups try to influence politicians. Campaign contributions. Fairly obvious one. Donate to a campaign. A politician helps you out when they get elected. These are some of the biggest donors to Republican and Democrat, for that matter, political action committees and candidates. You can see, like, for example, these guys, I guess that's FAR LLC, they're very pro-environmental cause. So they donated $90 million to various PACs, candidates, super PACs, and Democrat Party. But you can see we got technology people, we got trade unions, we got drug industry, we got investors, finance, all kinds of stuff. We got education. And these people all have favors that they want. If they donate to a political campaign, you can rest assured that they want something back in return. Here's the problem, though. Politicians, in many cases, need interest groups. They need lobbying. They certainly need campaign donations because you have to have money to compete in a campaign. The other thing is they need information. So interest groups provide political donations, but they also provide information, technical information that politicians lack. For example, like Google, a lobbyist from Google, or lobbyist representing Google, is going to know much more about the internet and broadband and stuff like that than a congressman. So in many cases, they're ahead of the curve. The private sector is ahead of the government, and therefore tries to influence the government. Okay, next strategy. Litigation. Special interest groups will pursue an agenda by trying to work through the courts, and that's litigation. So right now I have a bunch of cases up. I took this directly from the ACLU website. So these are cases that either the ACLU was the main party in the case, or they filed an amicus curiae brief, meaning they were a friend of the court. They tried to get the Supreme Court to take the case. Now, we've talked about many of these in class, and they have their top 75 cases up on their website if you would like to go look at that. That'd be cool. If not, that's cool too. But this is their main strategy, is get policy enacted by different Supreme Court decisions. Moving on, the iron triangle. Okay, and this is really important. It's always on the AP Gov exam, so just pay attention. Okay, you have your 3 points of the iron triangle. You have Congress, the interest group, and the bureaucracy. At one corner is, let's take the interest groups, also known as constituencies. These are powerful. These are powerful interest groups that influence congressional votes in their favor and can sufficiently influence the re-election of a member of Congress in return for supporting their programs. Another corner of the triangle sits Congress, who also seek to align themselves with a constituency for political and electoral support. These congressional members support the legislation that advances the interest group's agenda. Occupying the third corner of the triangle is the bureaucracy, who are often pressured by the same powerful interest groups their agency is designed to regulate. So let me give you the perfect example. Remember I said keep in mind Patton Boggs. So this is John Boehner. He cries a lot, and he was former Speaker of the House of Representatives. So he's the guy everybody knew. They elected him. Remember, the whole House elects the Speaker of the House. He appoints heads of committees. They follow his agenda. He resigned. This is before Paul Ryan was Speaker of the House. Boehner resigned, and Boehner went to work for a lobbying firm. He went to work for Patton Boggs. One of his clients was big tobacco companies. So Boehner knows a ton of people in Congress. So Boehner has access to Congress because he knows them. So what Boehner does is he lobbies Congress and lobbies for example, the CDC to deregulate and not impose a whole bunch of restrictions on the tobacco industry. And that's how it works. Many times the politicians will move back and forth from Congress to the lobbying firm to maybe even the bureaucratic agency that's supposed to be regulating that industry. That is an iron triangle. And thus ends part 1.